pretty disturbing how much nuclear waste has seeped into the planet's soil and water. Today, we're talking about some towns around the world with some nuclear secrets. And we're starting things off with Sarov, a Russian town that is completely closed off to outsiders as it is the center for nuclear research. During the Cold War, it was known by the codename Ozersk 16, and its location was kept so secret that it didn't even appear on maps. It was the hub for developing and producing nuclear weapons. Top scientists and engineers were brought there to work on the Soviet Union's most confidential projects. The town was heavily guarded, and strict security measures were in place so that no information about its activities ever leaked out. Residents couldn't talk about their work. Even with close family members, the town was basically one big closed-off laboratory. And yes, even today, Sarov is still a closed city. Access is highly restricted, and you need special permission to enter. The Cold War may be over, but the town is still the center for nuclear research and development in Russia. Before we get to the next point, make sure to stick around to the end, because I'm doing a comment shout out, and this one is pretty interesting. Alright, on to the next. This one doesn't even sound real when I describe it. It sounds like it could have been Dr. Evil's secret base for the next Austin Powers movie. We're talking about Camp Century in Greenland. So this was a top secret military base that was built by the United States during the Cold War, hidden beneath the ice in Greenland. It was built as part of Project Iceworm, where the plan was to build nuclear weapons launch sites under Greenland's ice sheet. Workers dug a series of tunnels and rooms out of the ice, creating a small, self-sustaining city beneath the surface. It had everything from a kitchen to a hospital. There was a barber shop, a chapel, even a small cinema, if you can believe it. The entire facility was powered by a portable nuclear reactor, making it the first nuclear-powered base of its kind. It operated from 1959 to 1967. Now, of course, the government didn't reveal to the public that they'd built this network of tunnels across Greenland to hide nuclear missiles aimed at the Soviet Union. What they said was that they were studying the ice cap and testing construction techniques in extreme cold. The project didn't end up working out though. The ice sheet was constantly moving and shifting, which caused structural problems for the tunnels and buildings. It just wouldn't be feasible in the long run, so Camp Century ended up being abandoned. Next up on the list we have Oak Ridge, which was part of the Manhattan Project, the secret US government program during World War II that developed the first nuclear weapons. Oak Ridge, Tennessee was established in 1942. It was a secret city at the time, built from scratch in a remote area to house the enormous facilities that were going to be needed for producing the materials for nuclear explosives. The whole operation was so top secret that many of the thousands of workers that lived and worked there had little idea of what they were actually working on. They knew their small part of the process, obviously, but the overarching goal was hidden from most of them, and even though there were all these people living on this site, the government denied its existence and it was kept off of maps. And the same goes for the next spot on the list. Los Alamos, New Mexico. This was the brain center for the Manhattan Project. It was heavily guarded, and it was where some of the brightest scientific minds, including J. Robert Oppenheimer himself, gathered to design and build the actual weapons. Los Alamos was the perfect location because it was remote and it was isolated. Scientists there worked on the theoretical and practical aspects of creating a nuclear explosion, developing two types of explosives. You had your uranium-based one known as Little Boy and the plutonium-based Fat Man. And in the summer of 1945, everything came to a head. The first successful test of a nuclear explosive, known as the Trinity test, was carried out on July 16th of 1945 in the New Mexico desert. Now they knew that the bombs worked, and in August they were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And now we head back to Russia with Seversk, previously known as Tomsk 7. This town didn't start showing up on maps until 1992. Before that, it was top secret. Till this day, it's still a closed-off city though. It's not even easy for residents to leave and re-enter, let alone for visitors to get in. There are 6 checkpoints where visitors need to show their entry documents, and you need to be granted access by authorities or a specific institution being visited in the city. city. And this is the way it is today. Things used to be even more strict during the Cold War. So why is this city so locked down? Well, you can probably guess: nuclear stuff. Nuclear warheads are produced and stored here. Seversk is the home of the Siberian Chemical Combine, which produces uranium and plutonium. It played a very big role in the Soviet Union's nuclear weapons program, and it's still in use today. This place was also the site of one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. So on April 6th of 1993, a tank of highly radioactive material exploded at Tomsk 7 reprocessing complex. It blew out one of the exterior walls, releasing a cloud of radioactive smoke into the sky. Next up, we have the Hanford Site. This was a large area in Washington that was also used for nuclear production during World War II and the Cold War. From 1943 to 1987, the site produced plutonium for atomic bombs, including the one dropped on Nagasaki. And this production process created a lot of dangerous radioactive waste, which was stored on site. And the surrounding areas are still paying the price. This waste needs to be carefully managed and cleaned up. The US Department of Energy has been working to clean up the site and make it safer, but over the years there have been a higher than average amount of cancer cases in the surrounding towns. Nuclear waste is not easy to dispose of, and it's really bad news when it seeps into the water and soil. Apparently the Columbia River, which runs along the Hanford site, is very contaminated. Sellafield is a nuclear facility in Cumbria, England. It's been in operation since the 1940s. It was first used for nuclear weapons production and later for generating electricity through nuclear power, but Sellafield has also become notorious for its issues with nuclear waste. The site has accumulated a large amount of radioactive waste, including spent nuclear fuel, contaminated material, liquid waste, and this waste is highly hazardous. In the past, the waste wasn't stored well enough to prevent leaks and spills, so the surrounding area was contaminated. In 1957, there was an incident called the Windscale Fire. For 3 days, a fire burned and radioactive material was released into the environment. They've been trying to decontaminate the area for years, and it's better than it used to be, but Sellafield is still radioactive. The NDA estimates that decommissioning and cleanup will take over a century and cost tens of billions of dollars or pounds. This next one is also in the UK, but was a complete secret until being declassified in 2004. A huge underground complex in Wiltshire that was built to house thousands of government staff in the event of nuclear war. The once secret nuclear bunker is called Burlington. The massive underground bunker was basically built as a small city. There was room for a hospital, a bakery, and a BBC broadcasting studio, just so the government staff could get all that important news up to the people on the surface who'd likely all be dead anyway. Kinda sucks knowing that places like this are built in case of an emergency, but we won't be going there. It's not with the public safety in mind. That's the government for you though. Get into fights with other countries and then have all the citizens who had no choice or interest in the skirmish in the first place pay the price for it. Next up, we have another closed city in Russia, Norilsk. Once again, this city is mostly off limits to foreigners. You're only getting in if you have special authorization. And the reason for all the secrecy, Norilsk is home to one of the world's largest nickel and palladium mines. And during the Cold War, the Soviet Union wanted to keep its operations under wraps. And for decades, the place was completely closed off to outsiders. Why is it still hard to visit today? Not exactly sure, but maybe there is more going on than they're letting on. Along with all the permits you need to visit, the city is surrounded by heavily guarded perimeter fences. The Russian government is still pretty tight-lipped about what goes on here. Norilsk is also one of the most polluted cities on the planet. The mining operations have released tons of toxic chemicals into the air and water, making it a pretty hazardous place to live. The city's residents apparently have high rates of respiratory problems and health issues, and the surrounding environment is basically a toxic wasteland. Finally though, yet another closed city in Russia, Ozersk. Ozersk was founded in 1947. It has a population of around 80,000. It was the birthplace of the Soviet nuclear weapons program after World War II and wasn't granted town status until 1994. But the city is still a closed town because of its proximity to the Mayak nuclear facility, which processes nuclear waste and recycles nuclear material from decommissioned nuclear weapons. Ozersk and the surrounding countryside have been heavily contaminated by industrial pollution from the Mayak plant since the late 40s. And in 1957, which really seemed to be a bad year for nuclear disasters, a major disaster occurred at the Mayak plant, releasing more radioactive contamination than the Chernobyl meltdown. Yikes, contaminating thousands of square kilometers. We haven't done a comment shout out in a while, so this one is from my top 10 YouTubers that are actually AI robots video. This one comes to us from Athos Salome. He writes, "Good morning, James. I can explore your past, unravel your present, and predict your future. What would you like to know? I'm available to assist you with any matter, James. Thank you for your mention in the video." Have I caught the attention of the real-life Athos Salome? Is this just an imposter? I'm a little creeped out. Should I respond? Let me know what I should ask him. Anyway, let me know down in the comments. Thank you, Athos Salome, for the comment. The saga continues, I suppose. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.